I protected some women at a warehouse rave in Cape Town a few nights ago, and when I told the story to my friend, she insisted I make a video about it. So I'm going to tell you the story now in hopes that it inspires other men to think about how we protect women and the responsibilities that we have when we're out and about in nightlife and just in general. So I was taking a moment for myself outside the venue just to get some fresh air before I headed back inside to dance. And I noticed there was a guy sitting alone at a table. He looked a bit he had his head down on the table. He looked like maybe he had had a bit too much to drink. And I figured I would ask if I could sit with him and just check in on him. So I did so, sat down across from him at the table, and I said, "How's it going?" And he said that indeed he had had too much to drink and he was really feeling it and maybe he needed to go home. I was like, "No worries, brother. It happens to the best of us. It's all good. That's actually why I don't drink, but all you need to do is go home, drink some water, and it'll all be okay." And so we chatted for a bit longer, and it was really pleasant. You know, the energy exchange was positive. He seemed like quite a nice guy. I would put him max age, maybe 23, 24. And then his friend walks out and comes to join us at the table, and he stands next to us. And let's call this friend John. And so John says to this guy that I'm sitting with, let's call this guy Tyler. John says to Tyler, "You need to atone." And John looks pissed. He seems quite irritable. And I said, "No, he doesn't. He's just drank too much. It happens. It's okay. He's going to take care of it." And then John looks to me and he's like, "Well, do you know what he did?" And I said, "I don't know what he did. What happened?" And so John says, "He grabbed not one, but two women's asses on the dance floor without their consent. And so I made him leave and come out here and think about what he's done." And I was like, "No way. Tyler, brother, what's going on? What were you thinking?" And so John's clearly getting quite energized about this, right? Because he's very frustrated. I know that there's so many emotions swirling for him. A, potentially feeling some sort of guilt by association, right? Because that's his friend. And so he understands that you're accountable for the things that your friends do. Another emotion would just be disappointment and anger that a friend would do something like that and would violate people's bodily autonomy. I think both of them were on different substances, likely had been drinking and stuff like that. But so I developed a bit of rapport with Tyler, and I could see the energy John came in with, which is this very chastising, very energy, rightfully so. But I didn't feel that it was the right energy for that moment where we could have an accountability conversation that would actually inspire change. So I said, "John, you should sit down with us." So John takes a seat next to Tyler, and I say, "Tyler, what was going on for you, brother, that you felt that that was an okay thing to do?" And Tyler starts talking. He's like, "I don't know. I just had too much to drink. I don't know." And, John goes, "That's no excuse." And he starts to go off again on kind of a bit of a tirade to say, "This is serious. People could press charges. This is serious." And he's right. But I said, "John, I love that energy. You are an amazing friend and you're holding him accountable. But this energy, speaking about, the consequences of the actions and all of that, I think that's needed tomorrow for you guys to have a coffee conversation together when you're sober. So right now, I want to just get into what he's feeling." And so John says, "Okay." He's probably a bit irritated at me because I don't know them. I'm not their close friend. And here I am coming and trying to, the situation, direct it, right? But since I work with men and boys on accountability conversations, on healthy manhood, I felt very well positioned to have a conversation that hopefully would inspire some change and just really get into the emotions of why he made that decision. So I then go on to say, "Tyler, everyone here is here to have a good time. Everyone here is here to let loose and dance, and they want to feel a sense of safety and, euphoria and excitement, spend time with friends. And a part of feeling safe and comfortable is that people don't touch you and violate you when you're not expecting it. And it can be really disruptive and ruin your whole evening when someone does that." And he's like, "Oh, I just had too much to drink. I don't know." And then John pipes up and goes, "And he has a girlfriend." And I was like, "And you've got a girlfriend, mate. Listen, there's a lot of people here that have consumed substances, that have drank a lot, but their impulse when they're consuming alcohol is not to just grab random people, right? So what's going on for you that you felt that was an acceptable thing to do?" And he's like, I don't know." And I was like, "Well, listen, Tyler, you've got a really good friend here, John. Do you happen to have sisters?" And John goes, "Yes, I have an older sister. I'm really close to her. I think maybe that's why I care about these things." And I said, John, that's amazing. I also have an older sister. That's a huge gift, right? Older sisters run the world. And Tyler, do you have any sisters? And Tyler goes, no, I don't. And I said, well, John, see, that's actually a gift that you've got that gives you responsibility to bring that perspective and that insight to your friend circles, to the men in your life who don't have that same proximity, those intimate relationships with women familially or otherwise. And so you are the best person to chat to your good mate tomorrow over a cup of coffee once you guys have, sobered up about what happened here tonight to make sure that it never happens again. And then another guy comes and sits next to us. So now it's 4 grown men having a conversation about why one man chose to violate the bodily autonomy of 2 women at this club, right? And this guy here next to me, who sits next to me, is just kind of absorbing, and he's getting up to speed. And I bring him in and I say, well, we're talking about some action that Tyler took today to touch women without their consent. And I say it in a tone that is not to center the emotion of shame on Tyler. Shame shuts us down and closes us in. And if I want him to actually think about his actions, I don't want him to shut off and feel that he's a bad person. So I tell him, I said, you've done something bad, right? You've made a bad decision and you've hurt people. That doesn't make you a bad person. If you immediately think that it makes you a bad person, then you're going to shut down and you're going to want to ignore the problem because the problem makes you a bad person. But doing bad things doesn't make us bad people. And in order to move through, learn from our mistakes, repair, apologize, and hopefully not make the mistake again, we have to be able to talk about it. So your job as a human being, but I believe especially as a man, is actually to bring a sense of safety wherever you go. And what you've done this evening is not that. It is not bringing a sense of safety. It's not bringing a sense of calmness. It's in fact causing harm and making people feel unsafe. And the reason why I wanted to have this conversation in this way is because there are a lot of people who may feel no matter what you do, if you assault someone, if you harass someone, you deserve to be beaten up, right? That's how we'll stop this, is if someone watches it happen or sees right after the fact, we take this guy, drag him out, we beat him up, he'll never do it again. But what would that actually solve, right? Because he's already intoxicated. He made the decision to do that because he hasn't had enough conversations like this with other men, with other people in his life. And if we chose violence, it would not only alarm everyone else and potentially ruin the evening for everybody and trigger people because they'd be witnessing the violence, but it wouldn't actually teach him why what he did was wrong. It would just physically hurt him, emotionally hurt him, activate his nervous system. And then, he would be scared to do it again in future, right? He would have a fear response, but he would not have an understanding of why that's wrong. We would just be repeating a cycle of violating someone's bodily autonomy and imposing our strength, our might, our domination on someone who, again, is drunk and couldn't defend themselves. So that is where a lot of us men, I think we've been conditioned to believe we can be protectors, is we will be vigilantes administering retributive justice by way of physical violence when we see that someone has harmed a woman. And that's what we're looking out for, right? We're saying, if I spotted, I would beat anyone up that tries to hurt a woman. But because we're really looking for these overt signs, right? Someone grabbing someone from behind a bush, someone doing something super violent that we can then go and enact violence and intervene on, we're not noticing all of the other things that are happening, the more subtle instances of harassment and assault, for example, someone grabbing someone's butt on the dance floor that we might not be paying attention to. So then the guy that sat next to me actually pipes up and says, I did see him do that and I wanted to say something, but I didn't know if it was my place or I didn't know. And I told him, I said, that's great instinct that you have. You're also a very tall guy, but you have great presence. We'd been dancing together on the dance floor. You've got really good, positive vibes. Even though you're big in stature, you don't have an imposing or threatening energy. And that means you also have a responsibility to go and intervene in a calm manner and say, hey, man, that's not cool. Let's go take a walk. Let's go chat. Are you all right? Cool. Let's go take a walk. And so he was like, yeah. And I said, you need to trust that instinct more. If there's something in your stomach, there's some intuition that says I should go and do something, I should go in with that calm energy. Don't go in guns blazing with your fists, right? But go and pull someone, use firmness, use structure, pull the guy out so you can have a conversation just like we're having right now. And so Tyler's sitting across from me, and Like, guys, thank you so much. I'm really sorry. And I said, well, you don't need to be sorry to us. You need to be sorry to those women. You're not in a position right now where you can go and apologize because you're drunk. So what we need to do, I want you to open up your phone. You're going to order yourself an Uber to go home. And John, you're going to send him a text. You guys are going to get a coffee together tomorrow, and you're going to talk about what's happened here this evening, okay? John, you're going to share this gift of why you care so much, because you have a sister, and you're going to make sure that this never happens again. So Tyler, is this ever going to happen again? And he said, I don't think so. And I said, Tyler, what would it feel like to say with full confidence that it will never happen again? Because that uncertainty you have around not being able to control this impulse that's come out this evening, that is something you really need to work on and work through, because it is something that should never happen again. Just in the same way no one should ever be able to touch you or violate your bodily autonomy, you should never do that with anyone else. And he's like, you're right. Okay. Right. And so I made sure to sit with him and wait for him until his Uber came, and kind of kept reaffirming him that, like, done this bad thing, it doesn't make you a bad person. You do need to acknowledge this in the light of day when you're sober and work through this with your friends. It is so important that we as men, even if not, the two of us don't know you guys, but like now spoken about this. And the reason why this is so important that men have these accountability conversations with one another is because violence doesn't actually solve anything. We need to know that even if we're not friends, just my fellow man, I have a responsibility for setting a standard for all of our behavior. And then I also have a responsibility for helping repair conflict, for elevating that standard and making sure that we are not causing harm collectively, right? That is how we make people safer. That's how we make the world safer. That's how we make women safer, is by calling men in to reflect on their behavior rather than calling them out and indicting them. So I'm making invitations. I'm inviting you to reflect. I'm not indicting you. Now, there are levels to this, of course, because there are some behaviors that are so egregious. They require indictment, call out, intervention, and more immediate consequence. But most of what's happening right now in the world, in nightlife, a lot of it needs calling in. It needs men's circle. It needs men's accountability, not as a mechanism of policing, but as a mechanism of restoration, of love, of care. I care about that man's heart who's sitting across from me, even though he's done harm. I care about his friend who's frustrated and angry and feeling defensive. I care about the man next to me that's witnessing this conversation and hopefully is inspired to intervene and have this conversation himself in a future moment. I care about the women that Tyler touched without their consent. I care about the entire energy of a social space that I'm in, making sure everyone feels safe, like they can enjoy themselves, right? And so this is, in my belief, how we will all get to a place of protection. And it's not by walking around being these big, muscular, fight-ready, badass vigilantes, because that's what a lot of us men consider ourselves to be right now. But we don't actually have to administer those skills often. We don't have to fight often because we're not paying attention. A lot of the stuff that men do to create harm is more subtle. And you have to be aware of it, and you have to be willing to have these uncomfortable conversations. Take 20, 30 minutes outside of your evening, even just 15 outside of your evening, to have these conversations in nightlife, because I promise it is important. It will have positive impact. I ended up, after Tyler went home and John went back inside, and this other guy and I had a bit of a chat, but I did contact the event organizer and just say, hey, this happened. Here are the names of the two guys involved. Not sure if you know them. Just wanted you to be aware that we had this wonderful conversation, but if you see them at a future event of yours, mention it to them. You should, as organizer, be aware that these things will happen in your spaces, and we have to have a mechanism in place that's not just like a big bouncer security guard beating someone up, but it's like, who can you call to have these conversations? So that's my story. And I'm not telling you this because I view myself as this white knight savior. I do have that streak in me, of course, and it's learned behavior from my background. But what I did there was really just taking a moment to have conversation with men and invite them to reflect on their behavior. And in so doing, elevate the standard for us all. And I think if a lot more men were willing to have these conversations, the world would be a safer place. So if we could all do better, if we could all make that commitment that when I'm going to go out, when I'm out and about, I'm going to check in on people's safety. I'm going to go and have a conversation with someone if they're alone and just check in, are they good? And I'm going to be more vigilant around this guy lurking. Is he hovering a bit too close on the dance floor? Does their body language look a bit uncomfortable? Maybe they don't know each other. Maybe I can actually just grab and say, hey, mate, you want to come over here? Can you tell me the time? Or, hey, bro, come dance over here. Or just non-verbally, like, get close to all of them and get in between them. What can I do to ensure the safety of people that doesn't involve vigilante violent justice? Because the thing that started, him grabbing someone's body without consent, that started way earlier. It started in his mindset around women's bodies. It started in conversations he's never had, with other adults, with other men. It started in how much he had to drink that night as well, but that's not an excuse. So there are ways in which we can be more perceptive and observant, again, about body language. If you're looking at women and make eye contact and say, hey, you good? Just check in, right? And that is also how you become a safe man. Not by being the biggest and the strongest and the most tough and the best at jiu-jitsu and MMA or Muay Thai or whatever. That's not how you become a safe man. Your capability of doing violence is not this stamp that you have on your forehead that everyone now knows, oh, I better not do anything bad around this guy. No. You become a safe man through the energy that you have. And it's not energy of like, better not fuck with me. If you fuck with me, you're going to get hurt. The energy you have is to make people feel safe through your care, through your consideration. And that care and consideration can be getting someone a drink of water or going with some friends and saying, hey, I think you guys have had a bit too much to drink. Will one of you come with me and we'll get a couple waters over there? Or it can be just, hey, I just wanted to check in on you. I noticed, are you feeling okay this evening? Cool, just checking. Sweet, have a good night. I'm Johnny, by the way. Cool. So this is my very long-winded story to tell you how I protected some women, and I'm hoping that it can inspire you to do something similar, and I'm hoping that it can make you more observant in your nightlife, brother. And if you have similar stories, please let me know in the comments of this video. Let me know, how things are going in your life and what you think we could all do to ensure we are being safe, protective, kind men in this world that desperately needs that from us right now. I'm Hey Brother Johnny, and hey brother, have a great day.